On the morning of the 5th of April, year 845, humanity learned a truth it had spent 107 years avoiding. The walls were not permanent. They had stood for over a century, 3 concentric rings of stone rising higher than any natural formation, higher than any structure humanity had imagined necessary. Wall Maria, Wall Rose, Wall Sina, each one enclosing the next, each one separating the living from what waited outside. For 107 years, they had not failed. On the morning of the 5th of April, that changed. This is the record of what happened in the district of Shiganshina and what it cost. Beyond the walls lived the Titans, enormous, humanoid, purposeless except in their appetite for human beings. They had driven humanity to the edge of extinction before the walls were built. In the generations since, they had become something the interior population held at a careful distance, close enough to justify the walls, far enough not to disturb their sleep. Most succeeded. The walls had stood for over a century. Entire generations had been born inside them, lived inside them, died inside them, without ever encountering a Titan. For many, the creatures had become something theoretical, something that existed but did not intrude on daily life. Knowing something exists is not the same as believing it will reach you.
People assume we lived in fear, that we were always aware of what was out there, always looking at the wall. That is not how it was. You have to understand, the wall had stood for 107 years before that morning. 107 years. My grandmother was born inside that wall. Her grandmother was born inside that wall. When something has never failed in 107 years, you stop thinking about whether it might fail. It becomes like the ground beneath your feet. You stop noticing it is there. We were not naive. We simply lived. That is what people do.
Shiganshina sat at the southmost point of Wall Maria, a curved protrusion of the outer wall, purpose-built to permit access to the territory beyond. It was not a wealthy district. Its economy ran on proximity to the outer gate, to the Survey Corps expeditions that departed from it, to the modest agricultural plots that stretched into the perimeter land between the walls. The outer gate stood here, the only passage between the world inside and the world outside. From this gate, the Survey Corps launched their expeditions. Residents grew used to watching soldiers depart. Some grew used to watching them not return. That proximity gave Shiganshina something the interior cities did not have, a quiet literacy with danger. Interior residents could pretend the outside world was theoretical. Shiganshina residents knew it was not. But knowing something exists is not the same as believing it will reach you. Shiganshina stood unchanged for as long as anyone could remember. People in Shiganshina assumed it would continue to stand. Among Shiganshina's residents in the spring of year 845 was the family of Grisha Yeager, a physician who had arrived in the district some years earlier, whose origins were not entirely known and who had, by the time of the events described here, become a fixture of the community. His wife, Carla. His son, Aaron, aged 9. A neighbor girl, Mikasa Ackerman, who spent most of her days at the Jaeger home. Carla Jaeger was, by the accounts of those who knew her, a woman defined by presence rather than circumstance. Neighbors described her as warm without being sentimental, practical without being cold. She baked bread each morning. The smell drifted into the street and down it. Her neighbors grew used to it. They mentioned it later as the most specific thing they remembered about her. That morning, the 5th of April, year 845, she baked bread. She sent Aaron and Mikasa out to run errands through the district's narrow roads. The sky was clear. The gate was closed. The wall stood exactly as it always had. Nothing about the morning seemed unusual. No one expected anything unusual.
Carla was my neighbor for 6 years. 6 years. Our children played together every day. She made bread every morning. You could smell it from the street. I used to joke with her about it. I said, "Carla, you are going to make us all fat before we see 40. She laughed. She always laughed. That morning I could smell the bread when I left my door. That was the last time I smelled it. When I smell bread now, even now, 20 years later, I have to put it down and leave the room. I am sorry. I do not usually. She was just my neighbor, that is all. She was just my neighbor.
At approximately 8:40 in the morning, something appeared above Wall Maria. Something appeared. A shadow first, a shape that soldiers on the parapet could not initially categorize. Something in the periphery of experience that the mind refuses to process directly. For several seconds, Garrison soldiers on the southern wall stood still and stared upward without responding. Not from cowardice, from the simple fact that nothing in human experience had prepared them for what they were looking at.
I had been on that wall for 3 years. 3 years of nothing. You stand there and you look out and there is nothing. Just the land, just the grass, just the empty space between the walls. After 3 years you stop looking. You go through the motions. You check the gate. You walk the parapet. You come back. That morning I was on the southern parapet when the shadow appeared. I want to be precise about this because I have been asked to describe it many times and I always struggle with the same problem. There is no frame of reference. There is nothing in human experience that prepares you for something that size appearing where nothing should be. It was above the wall. It was looking down at us. I did not run. I could not move. I stood there and I looked up at it and I thought, I remember thinking very clearly, that is impossible. Not frightening, not monstrous, just impossible. The mind rejects it before the body can respond. Then it raised its foot.
The colossal titan lifted its foot. The kick destroyed the outer gate and the structure surrounding it. The shock wave alone, the pressure displacement of that impact, collapsed buildings within hundreds of meters. Civilians who were not struck by debris were thrown from their feet by air alone. The wall had stood for 107 years. The gate was gone in seconds. Within minutes, Titans began entering the district through the breach. The defense of Shiganshina had been built on a single premise, that the wall itself would hold. The formations, the protocols, the positioning of Garrison soldiers. Every tactical element had been designed with an intact wall as its foundation. When that premise failed, the defensive structure that depended on it failed with it. Not from incompetence and not from cowardice, from the simple fact that the manual assumed a gate still existed. Titans were no longer outside the walls. They were inside the city.
I want to say something about the other soldiers because it matters and no one ever asks about it. We did not run immediately. That is not what happened. 3 of us tried to mount a response. We knew the protocols. We tried to follow them. The protocols did not account for this. When the first of the civilians started coming through beneath us, running, screaming with children, that is when I understood that the protocols did not matter, that nothing I had been trained to do applied to what was happening. We got off the wall. We went into the street. We tried to help people move. That is the honest answer. We stopped being soldiers and we became people trying to help other people. I do not know if that was the right decision. I have thought about it for 20 years. I still do not know.
Panic moved through the district faster than the Titans did. Civilians rushed for the inner gate, the passage that led deeper into Wall Maria toward safety. Garrison soldiers attempted to hold the streets long enough for evacuation to proceed. But Titans moved through the city faster than anyone expected. The formations designed to delay them were overwhelmed. Entire neighborhoods that had stood for generations collapsed in minutes. The streets filled, then emptied. Evidence of the evacuation settled across the cobblestones. A child's shoe, a market basket, a coat abandoned mid-flight. The small evidence of lives interrupted at the exact moment they had expected to continue. The district that had stood unchanged for over a century came apart in less than an hour.
My husband had the children. I was behind him. We were separated in the crowd near the market square. Not far, maybe 10 meters, but the crowd was so thick I could not reach them. I could see the back of his head. That is what I focused on, just the back of his head, moving through the crowd. I did not look at anything else. At some point, I realized I could hear something behind me, a sound I cannot describe, a kind of displacement, like all the air moving at once, but heavy. I knew what it was. I did not look back. I have never looked back. In my life, not once since that morning have I looked back when I was afraid. We made it through the gate, my husband, my children, all of us. I know that is not how it ended for everyone. I know that. I do not know how to hold both of those things at once, that we survived and that most of them did not. I have been trying to hold both of those things for 20 years. I have not yet managed it.
Among the countless individual tragedies of that morning was the death of Carla Yeager. She had not evacuated. Accounts from survivors indicate she had been trapped beneath the debris of her home when a Titan destroyed a nearby structure, the collapse reaching the adjacent buildings. Her husband, Grisha, had left earlier that morning on an errand whose nature was not fully understood. He did not return in time. She was 29 years old. Her son watched from the arms of a Garrison soldier as he was carried away. There were thousands of stories from that morning that followed the same shape. A person present when everything began, absent before it ended. In the accounting of a catastrophe this size, individual deaths become statistical. They are counted, filed, recorded as part of a larger number. Carla Yeager was 29 years old. Her neighbor could still smell her bread.
My husband went back. We were through the gate. We were safe. And he said he had to go back. There was a neighbor, an older woman. She lived alone. She would not have known which way to run. I told him not to. I held his arm. He looked at me and he said her name. Just her name. Like that would explain everything. It did explain everything. That was the worst part. I understood exactly why he was going. I let go of his arm. They closed the gate 20 minutes later. I do not talk about this usually.
By early afternoon, military command made a decision that had no precedent in a century of recorded history. Wall Maria could no longer be defended. The order was given to evacuate all remaining civilians behind Wall Rose, the outer wall, the wall humanity had trusted for over a century as the boundary of everything, was to be surrendered, not temporarily, indefinitely. Hundreds of thousands of people who had lived within Wall Maria fled inward. Refugee camps formed overnight in the farmland between the walls. Food shortages followed within weeks. For the first time in living memory, in any memory, humanity had lost territory. The fall of Shiganshina was not simply the loss of a district. It was the moment an entire civilization discovered that the defenses they had trusted absolutely were temporary, had always been temporary, and that the 107 years of safety had not been proof of permanence, only of patience. Aaron Yeager was evacuated through the inner gate by a Garrison soldier named Hannes at approximately 9:15 in the morning. He arrived in Wall Rose without his mother, without his home, without his district. He was 9 years old. He was placed, along with thousands of other displaced children, in settlement housing in the southern reaches of Wall Rose. Documents from this period describe him as quiet, cooperative, not visibly distressed in the ways the relief workers had been trained to identify. He did not cry in the accounts that survive. He did not speak much. He watched. Hannes, the soldier who had carried him through the gate, checked on him 3 times in the weeks following the fall. Each time, the boy asked him the same question. Not, "When will we go home?" Not, "Where is my father?" He asked, "How do we kill them?" The fall of Shiganshina lasted less than a day. Its consequences lasted considerably longer. The district was not reclaimed for 5 years. When Survey Corps units re-entered in year 850, they found it as it had been left, streets intact, structures standing, the ordinary evidence of 10,000 ordinary lives preserved in a kind of accidental archive. A kettle on a stove, a child's toy, a table set for a meal that was never eaten. No one moved back. The people who had lived there had built new lives in wall rows, or had not survived to build anything. Shiganshina continued to exist as a place on maps, as a memory in the people who had known it, as a wound that several of them, speaking to us decades later, described in the same terms. Not healed, present, something they had learned with time to carry. On the morning of the 5th of April, year 845, the people of Shiganshina woke in the world they had always known. By nightfall, that world was gone.